Welcome to Live Stories, a podcast that holds space for inspirational interactions that are real about navigating the challenging journey of separation and divorce. Expect laughter and some tears. It's all welcomed because Lived Stories is meant to be a safe space.
Let's talk about that too, because, all right, abandoned, marriage is trash, husband don't like you. How did you know it was time to exit? So there are bumps. So it was bump, 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 try everything. When was the knowing?
The knowing, well, it was interesting because the Holy Spirit had started giving me visions of him being with somebody else. Visions. And by this time, I had come back into the industry and I had made my Broadway debut, which then exposed a whole host of other things because I was pretending to be this model Christian woman, which meant I put all my desires to the side. But then when Broadway came knocking, I remember the marriage had gotten so bad that I prayed, Lord, please give me a baby or a Broadway show. And I booked the Broadway show from an open call. It was like, God was like, girl, we're going to airlift you out of this situation, because getting that accomplishment exposed all of his insecurities. It brought me back to my gifts and strengths, which I had decided were only meant for the church, only meant to be managed by a specific person and group. When really it's like, no, your calling is bigger than this, and it's really not this. So when I actually started getting back to myself, everything started tearing apart, because you can't hide your true self for a long time. You might try, but it's going to come back. So it's like my natural leadership and my shine started bringing all of these opportunities to me. And he had been told his whole life that you can't do that. And it's like, but you married a girl who did. So maybe you can. And it was just like, we started having these it was like he kept trying to sabotage my career in different ways. And I remember it had been months since we had been intimate, and I'm in a cast with a lot of men that were like, yo, you're dope. And I was like, but I'm married, I can't. But I would go home
Pent up.
pent up to a man who wouldn't touch me, who actually didn't like me. And it was like, do you know what I'm turning down? I'm playing a mermaid. Yeah, I'm remembering what I'm working with, because the men in the cast are telling me I look dope, and my own husband isn't telling me this. So it was like, it was the beginning of the end when I got Mermaid. And I remember it was our last anniversary that we spent together. I was determined we were not going to fight. I was like, I'm going to just let things roll off my back today.
Such a good submissive wife you are.
Girl, listen, I tried. Literally, God is my witness. I tried. Meanwhile, all the godly women in my family are like, girl, what are you doing? Yeah, but I remember he had asked me, and this is my truth. So if he listens to this, he cannot deny that this happened. So he had it in his head that I was just this ungrateful, lazy wife that never wanted to do anything for him. So he had been asking me to open his mail for him. And I remember I was like, I am not your secretary. What do you mean? Like, is your job? I grew up the daughter of an elementary school teacher. Your job is not so taxing that you can't open the mail. But you know what? I was like, it's our anniversary. I'm going to do him a solid. And while we're sitting, after we had a lovely day together, I'm going to open up the mail. There's an envelope addressed to him. I open the mail. I pull it out. It is a flyer for an escort service strip club. and I'm sitting on the couch with him, and he feigns indifference. I don't know how they got our address. It's literally written on the envelope with no return address. And that was when I was like, okay, I think I gotta go. Because he had also done something that I'm actually not going to go into detail about, but he literally risked my Broadway career because of something he did. And thank God to the people that were involved that they understood it was a he thing and not a me thing. But it's like, wow, you really hate me that much that this thing that we quote unquote prayed for together, you're now acting out. I had to call our pastor and ask, I was like, SOS, he's wilding out. He did X, Y, and Z. It was just like the more career opportunities I got, the closer I got back to my true self, the more he acted out against me. And I remember it literally took me, apparently some of my best friends at the time had started a prayer meeting. Yeah, I didn't know this. I can't believe I never told you this. Yeah, a handful of friends started a prayer meeting that God would show me what I needed to see so I could leave the marriage. Because he was verbally abusive. He was yelling at me in public. He was yelling at me on the subway. What do? I shut down. I try to be the submissive wife. But I kept saying, I made a vow in front of God and my family and friends. I am not leaving this man unless I get proof. And it was like all of the prayers were answered at once because he was going up to Canada for a camping trip. And his best friend was going to go and he was going to come by. He forgot a tent or something. So he texted me from Canada. Mind you, I was still in that Broadway show. And he said, okay, so-and-so is going to come by and pick up the tent. This is where it is. It's under the bed in this big Tupperware thing. So I was like, cool. So I'm getting ready for my show. We were living in Brooklyn at the time. So I had it timed out as to when I needed to leave. And I will never forget, I pull out the Tupperware thing and I see all of this evidence, all of these notes, prices, articles, descriptions of people. Like, it was all there. It was as if God was like, we are done with his nonsense. Here is all of the evidence. Now get yourself to safety. Because he had become, and if I'm speaking to any
take your time.
It still hits me, because when you have, if there's anybody out here that is being spiritually abused, verbally abused, and emotionally abused, please get yourself to safety. Because the thing is, we can be so godly that it kills us.
Say it again for the people in the church in the back.
We can, as women, sometimes be so godly that it kills us. Because there were nights that I went to bed and I was like, this man might hurt me in my sleep. And I felt so alone and so ashamed. I didn't want to tell my parents, because what do they tell you when you get married?
Don't tell your business.
Don't tell your business, because you can forgive your spouse, but your family never will. So I will never forget. There was a night where I was like, I'm so unhappy. I just want my parents. And I lived not too far away. It was a train ride away to Philly. I can remember how the words felt when he would hurl them at me. I remember there was one time he picked a fight. I was making Thanksgiving dinner and I was making the turkey. And he all of a sudden came in and wanted to make a change to the recipe. He didn't really cook. I didn't understand why he was suddenly coming in, but he picked a fight because he said I was being, wait for it, wasteful with the aluminum foil. He yelled at me so bad, I had to go lay down, and I texted a girl I was friends with at the time, and I said, "Yo, I'm sorry. I don't think I can have you guys over because it's so bad." And she knew what the yelling was like. But she was like, "I'm sorry, we just don't have anywhere else to go. Can we still come, and we'll just help?" And I said, "All right, but just know that you're coming into a horrible situation." And it was like the way that he would just cut me down, but put it under the spiritual umbrella of me being unsubmissive or not being a godly woman or being selfish and all of these things. Meanwhile, he's out cheating on me and paying for it. I said it. It's my truth. I literally took the receipts. So we might have to edit this out. Maybe, I don't know. I got to chew on that because there are parts of my story that, no, actually, it's my truth. It's my truth. I got to chew on it. But you still see how it's like, I still want to protect that man.
I was going to go exactly where you're going because you said as you were laying, you said, I wanted my parents, but I was afraid that they would not forgive him, meaning that you had no intention yet. You still loved him.
Oh God, yeah.
You still wanted to protect him, even though he was doing these things to you. And I actually know your ex-husband. I still can't even believe because I actually don't know some of these things. And so like right now, and I can't believe it, but I do. It's your truth. But I do want to like address it. And I hope you don't want to edit out because there are people listening to this right now who are in this situation where a person is being harmful to you. And if you are being abused, exit now and get to safety for yourself. But if it's one of those emotional, spiritual, that is still a level of abuse. And that person doesn't love you. That's not love. And also, love ain't enough, y'all. I said
Listen, because
yeah. So I just wanted to just make sure I went because I wanted you to, of course, you were talking, but as you were talking, I saw the love because a Christian wife who's been told, keep your marriage. There's some fights you don't share, but all of that is also isolating because then you're not talking to anybody. You're not like getting a gut check and be like, yo, is this off? Like, because you just believe so much of that and you're only harming yourself. And that's not the love that God has for you. And how we equate love is Jesus did it, right? So, I was going to ask you about, did you wrestle with God? But you answered that question because you weren't prepared to leave unless you had an exit and you got that exit. Now, Kiki for a second. Oh, go ahead.
It was just so clear because when I pray, I just talk to God like I'm talking to you.
Right.
And I remember I listed out what I would
need you to show me.
And when I tell you it was right there in front of me, I couldn't ignore it. But also, before I forget, when you are looking for a therapist, make sure it is not a therapist affiliated with your church.
Oh, yeah,
churches in your area, because it's beyond church counseling. Yeah. I tried it. It was very traumatic. And I was blamed for this man's infidelity and verbal abuse.
Oh, man.
And not only was I blamed by the people at the church, but then we got a recommendation of a licensed therapist. And I do not have the power to diagnose any sort of narcissist or narcissism. But what I will say is I watched this man spin a fable that was so enticing. This licensed therapist looked at me and was basically like, well, I see why he doesn't want to be with you.
Oh, wow.
So when you find your therapist, do not settle on the first one. You have to find the right one for you, the right one that both of you, if you're going to go by yourself or with your spouse, it's got to be someone you both agree with, because otherwise you are just going to get more abuse.
Well, here's the other thing. If you decide to do couples therapy, you both should also be in individual therapy, because that's also needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you guys are in couples therapy, there's probably some internal, personal, individual things to be worked through too,
Mhm.
that you should consider.
And there's no shame in getting therapy. It's not
Yeah.
ungodly to
No,
go to therapy.
listen, we go to professionals for our hair, nails, lashes, brow. What you should get you should get a professional for your marriage if you want it to last, work, etc. So let's
Yeah.
keep key for a second. So you get your receipts, all of them. You how did you unpack, like, did you find a lawyer? Like, what was that process? For those who
So
are like, girl, I know the receipts, but like I don't got no money for no lawyer. Yeah.
great question. Well, I had actually been working part-time at a law firm before I got married.
No.
Yeah, so I remembered one of the lawyers that I got along with, I said, "Hey, this is what happened in my marriage. He's been cheating on me. I want a divorce, but I can't afford, I know what our hourly rates are." And
Mm-hmm.
he said, well, there's something called a mediation. And
Mm-hmm.
since we didn't have kids, we didn't own property, we really didn't own anything. He
Mm-hmm.
was like, you can kind of just, as long as you're both down for mediation, it will, I think it was like a couple $100, because it was like, yeah, I'm going to leave with what I came with. I personally, in hindsight, I should have taken money, but I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I don't want spousal support. And here's why I say I should have taken some, because I helped that man get his master's degree. I helped him write his papers.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left, it also coincided with the end of Mermaid. So I was suddenly out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the one with the credit cards with the big limits. He cut me off of the credit cards, and it took me a while. I didn't know anything about filing unemployment. I was auditioning, but it was just like, I
Mm-hmm.
being able to get that mediation was such a load off my shoulders, because then when I took it to him, because he's very cheap. He is a very cheap man.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, his first question was about cost, even though he actually still had money. And I was like, it's only going to be a couple $100. We can split the cost. I wanted out of that marriage so bad. I was like, I will even split the cost, even though this is your fault. I'm going to split the cost. And he did not want to leave our apartment, because we had an amazing apartment right along Prospect Park, 2-bedroom with air conditioning and a dishwasher. And it was like $1,100. And he didn't want to leave. And I was frustrated. And my dad was like, you know what? Any man who is going to sit in that property and not leave immediately, because knowing what he did, he's not safe for you to be around. There is something wrong with him. So you need to move out. And once I got the okay from my dad, I went on Craigslist, found a sublet, and my tribe really rallied, like y'all rallied around me, got me out and set up in the new space. And in New York, you have to wait a certain amount of time. Like, I think you have to take a year before they can finalize things. And we decided to do one last counseling thing to see if we wanted to actually proceed toward divorce. And that was
Oh,
yeah, that was when the woman yelled at me. And I felt like that was another sign from God, like, girl, get out. We had already been separated a few months. We were legally separated for a few months, and we went back to this counselor, and that's when it exploded. And I remember being outside talking to one of my friends at the time, pacing back and forth, and she was just like, this might be God just saying, close the door. Stop hanging
hold
on to
on.
this.
He never
Yeah.
watched
Bing bong.
Game of Thrones. He was like, hold the door. No, close the door.
Close the door.
So from a resources perspective, you had to connect, mediation, you know, finances. We talked about that.
And also shout out to my family
Mhm,
because they
mhm,
I mean, I can't even front, like they literally paid so many of my bills for
mhm,
months after until I could get another job. And with
mhm,
that, I don't know what I would do. Like I lived with one of my friends for like a year after on her couch.
mhm, mhm.
You know, it takes a village.
Well, let's talk about the tribe. Let's talk about shared friends. I'm gonna kiki about that. So we can lighten it up a smidge. Like, what were you? I mean, your shared friends. What were you telling them? Or did you even have? You had shared friends. You must have.
We did. We
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
But I
Mhm,
was still in that mindset of that patriarchal mindset that I adopted because I went to that church we went to.
mhm,
So I was like, well, men should be friends with men and women with women. So I gave up two very dear friends because
mhm.
I was like, he needs you more than I do.
Well, that was wise and humble of you.
It was
Um,
humble, but let me tell you, he was out in these streets spreading lies. And that was when I realized, like, oh, I really, really did not love myself in that. I was still loving him more than myself because when I ran into
mm,
one of our mutual friends and he gonna come telling me like I ran into him and he's just so broken and he was talking about coming home and seeing that you had taken you had taken your stuff, like he's just like broken and and I said, sir, did he tell you that he doesn't want to stop having sex with other people, that he literally wanted us to be roommates, which is when I actually knew he was crazy. Because are you literally asking a black woman to be roommates with you after you cheated on her? And you literally say that you don't want to be monogamous. And from the look on his face, he was like, "Oh, he didn't tell me that." I was like, "Yeah, he didn't. I didn't just leave because I wanted to chase my career, which is the narrative he told his family and friends."
yeah. What's interesting too about, because even in the leaving, you're still protecting.
Yes.
And I felt that responsibility as well, because I didn't share with many people that I was, in fact, getting divorced. I think, and I'm gonna keep it 100, I was still going to that church, I would still be married.
I think you would too. I absolutely think you would.
Um, but the protection in in the separation, I I knew, in our situation different because I do have two kids, and I'd seen four separations, and I knew my kind of North Star. I had to take ownership of a lot in the separation because I didn't want the kids to suffer from our thing.
Yeah.
And I think in that, what I realized was there was a protection of the story
Mhm.
in that, in a sense,
Girl, I
protection
understand.
of the story, the protection, and it's like wild, right? Because it's like I know now what I was doing, but also too in the separation, and it was different. I was actually the financial person. I was the one who was making more, and your state is different in New Jersey. There's no bias in divorce, y'all. Ain't like check your law. Like it's all about who's the financial person who makes the most, and that's how they do all of that. So ain't no woman doesn't get, and joint custody doesn't happen. I mean, the woman doesn't get the kids. Like it's not that way. That's very like old time thinking. But I remember having to accept the hurt of the separation. Like it was almost like which hurt more,
Hmm,
staying or leaving.
that's real.
And I grieved that for so long.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started actually now talking about some of the things that were happening that I realized, oh, baby girl, like it's gonna hurt it's gonna hurt more to stay. Take the hurt. This hurt is better than that other hurt.
And that is so real because I remember thinking to myself, like, if nothing ever changes, and he's been showing that he's not willing to change, this might kill me. I cannot live my life like this. I can't even have a career if I'm half worried about my husband that I can't trust, who keeps showing me that I can't trust him. And there's such a shame, a stigma of divorce. Like I had so many well-meaning people coming up to me just because they recognize me at the church and saying, "Sister, you don't have to leave him. God hates divorce. Let me pray with you." And I literally just started telling people he cheated on me and he won't stop. Period, point blank. But it took people literally getting in my business for me to stand up for a decision that I did not make lightly.
Yeah.
Like nobody makes that lightly.
Nobody goes into marriage thinking they're going to get divorced,
That part.
but you also, because I wrestled with whether or not God would hate me for leaving my marriage. Um, and that's true. God does hate divorce because divorce is a separation and a sin. But that doesn't trump God's love for you.
Bingo.
I remember I was wrestling with it. And I um went to a cabin. The cabin had no Wi-Fi, we already had two young kids, and I just was like, when you have that weight and it feels like someone is stepping on your chest, and I couldn't shake it. And I was wrestling with this decision because I'm also a solver, like trying to solve for the kids, trying to solve for in the separation. I'm running through the plan.
Mhm.
And I was like, I just need to just get quiet. And I remember being afraid that God would not love me anymore if I were to leave this man. And I went to this cabin and cried and cried and cried. And then there was a small voice that reminded me of his love for me, and that no matter what, I love you.
Mm.
And tears are coming now because I go back there and I want to share that. And that's, I think, the first time I've ever shared that openly, because I want someone else to know that just because you get divorced doesn't mean God doesn't love you,
Yes.
because that is such a false doctrine
Yeah.
that is being taught. And it's such a taboo subject to even bring up.
Mhm.
Um, but that is the reality. There's nothing that separates you from the love of God. Um, and yes, he does hate divorce, but that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. And he also knows that there's rules in when you are right. And the other thing
Yeah.
he said is that you don't just like divorce isn't a quick thing.
No.
There's 1, 2, 3 divorces if that's what you want, but it is an unpacking. There's a mental rigor, there's a seesaw, there's so much. So by the time someone says I've ended my marriage, when people tell me like I had to get divorced, it's like, oh wow, I understand, because it wasn't a quick decision.
Yeah. My
And
first
people,
question is like, how are you? Because some people are like, I'm great because I needed to go. And I'm like, then I
yeah,
celebrate.
it's facts.
But if you're
Facts.
still sad, I'm like, all right, how can I'm here and I'm sorry. Because also something that a former friend that I do not claim anymore, but she did
Ooh.
give me this chunk of wisdom.
Mhm.
Um, she said, you have to grieve the dream of what you thought your marriage would be and the life you thought you would have. And that hit me like a ton of bricks because I thought I just need to get over it. I just need to move through it. And she was absolutely right. And in that grieving process, I realized, because you talking about your cabin experience, I was having my Job moment in bed, mad, mad. God, I followed all your rules, all of them. And still this happened. And when I tell you, I got all of these memories of times when we were dating that God tried to show me this is not your person. All these memories flooding back. I have so many red flags
You just be like, oh,
because I wanted to get
it'll
married.
change. It'll change when we get married.
I had
By
made
the
an
way,
idol.
it don't change.
It
Just
gets
because you get
worse.
married doesn't change anything.
They are who they are. And they might change to get you, but once you're married, they're going to go back to who they are. And a lot of us, myself included, make idols of marriage. And that's how God got me to see, like, I didn't deserve this, but also I was there and I shouldn't have been there. I never should have been on a second date with that man because I knew he was not on my level and he knew I was not on his level. He knew that he could never get to my level, which is why he resented me. So all of this talk about dating somebody who can pay the light bill, it might come back and bite you in the butt like it did for me because this was a light bill man. I'm on Broadway, he's paying the light bill. He resents me because I surpassed him in my career. So all of that for anybody who is like, I my standards are too high. Stop it. You have standards for a reason. What if God put those standards there so that you would not be deceived into getting into a marriage that doesn't serve you, that actually takes you off of your life course? How many years did I spend? I call that like my Israel desert moment, wandering in the desert. We were married for 4 years. The fifth year was paperwork because he didn't want a divorce. Not that he wanted to be married to me. He didn't want to get divorced because in his family, they judge people who get divorced. And when I tell you, I left in 2009 in August. And it really took till 2019 for me to be truly ready to open myself up to actual dating. And that's because I ignored my gut because I wanted to get married.
You talked about grief, and we went there for a second about grieving the story or grieving just like grieving the idea. I remember, and I got divorced in COVID times, and the story is I divorced over the phone, and the judge was like, Olivia Lewis, are you ready to get married? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, that's it?
Are you ready to get divorced?
Are you ready? He said, Olivia Lewis, may I speak with Olivia Lewis, the clerk? And then
that's
the phone. So I got married in the pandemic when there were no in person. So it was a virtual court date.
Virtual divorce. Wow.
Virtual divorce. And 14 years, took 5 minutes for it to be finalized. But I thought I was gonna like be twerking in these streets, like, yes. And I was sad. And I couldn't figure out why, because I'd been like, again, mediation, paperwork, like said all of that. And I didn't understand why I was sad, because it was my choice to end the marriage. And I had, legal and biblical rights to. And what I'm getting at is I was grieving the story of it. I was grieving a death, because the relationship died, and when something dies, you grieve. And and it was around my birthday, and I just couldn't figure it out until therapy, etc. So again, the therapy is so vital in this process, because you need tools, you need a professional to help you unpack this. You can't be an island to yourself, but I definitely didn't want to like skip out on the grief of it, because that is, even if it's an abusive situation, even if it was bad, you still become sad because it is an ending.
It's
So
final.
we're circling around. So just with anything in cycle, there was an ending. And let's talk about the new beginning. Y'all, she's twerking on the video. I cannot. And your love story and your evolution and instilling hope, because I don't, and we really got in there. We talked about some heavy stuff. I want to talk about, where you are now. And I am mindful of the tension and the balance of things you've gone through, but there is still a joy in the fact that you chose you.
Absolutely. Because on a regular basis, I am reminded that I would not be where I am if I hadn't left that marriage. The minute I left that marriage, 6 months later, I booked my first leading role. A year later, I book a play on Broadway, and I don't even have a master's degree. So it was literally like God was showing me, like, yeah, now that we've gotten that out of the way.
Now that I told you not to do the thing, and then you did it, and then I had to get you out of it.
Yes. Now we can actually do what you came here
Now
to do.
we can get to our regularly scheduled program, ladies and
Right.
gentlemen.
Right.
I think that's how he be talking to like the angels, Jesus, about us. Like
He's like,
here.
my angels. I have jokes with some of my friends, like they're like the airline workers, and they're trying to get me to like go in the right direction, and I'm like, no.
I don't see you.
So
I have a plan. Yes.
yeah, but I literally start from that experience. I started saying, God, I need a sign that if there's something bad for me, it needs to be unmistakable. I can't take subtlety. And when I tell you that prayer has been answered time and time again. So it was, after divorce, I'm sure a lot of people can relate that I didn't even know how to date. I was like, well, first I was too fragile to date.
Have to heal.
I waited until I got my divorce papers, and I was doing a show at La Jolla Playhouse, got my divorce papers. The whole cast helped me set up my match profile so that I could just, get my feet wet again. And it was so fascinating because I was like, it's been years. I don't even know how to do this. So I was on this journey of figuring out, like, well, how do I feel about premarital sex? Because I waited and it was not as advertised. So I'm not waiting again. It took me a few years to come to that. That's what worked for me, because I still, to this day, feel like if he and I had had sex before marriage, we would have been like, oh, this is not a match. We all need to do this. So that was interesting, like figuring out how do I want to date? Because I just felt so betrayed by the church, because I felt like I was sold this system of how to do dating and marriage right. Didn't work. Not only did it not work, it scarred me in the process. So it was like with each job I got to travel around the country. I got to learn my strength, learn parts of myself that I had forgotten. And, as I was getting older, I was like, you know what? It's good that I didn't have kids with him, because I don't have to, because I was beating myself up about that. There was also the shame, and I have to joke about it. It's like, well, how would the kids have been made? We weren't having sex.
Well, there's that.
There was that piece of me that was like, yeah, if I would have had kids with him, I couldn't do the things I'm doing now in my career. And I wouldn't have been able to pick up and move across the country to LA. So when I did that, I thought I was good. Like, I thought I had gotten through the roughest parts of healing. Come to find out, there's this whole other aspect of my healing I needed to explore. And that was really dating like the way I'm choosing to date, and following my gut and letting myself make mistakes, but also taking the pressure off of dating. Like, I'm not trying to find a husband right now. I've already been in a bad marriage. I'm not rushing it, And I'm not just doing it just to do it, just so, because like, when everybody, thinking about like as I got older, when I turned 40, I was like, oh, I
Mm,
gotta meet somebody soon or I gotta freeze these eggs. But
mm.
my bank account was like, girl, you ain't freezing nothing. What you think this is? That stuff isn't for free. You're still an actress. So I grieved that. I had to grieve that because I was also like, this is something I always saw myself as
Mm,
being pregnant.
mm,
But I was very careful about who I had sex with because I was like, if I can't see myself spending 18 to 25 years of my life connected to you, you will not be doing that with me because condoms break.
mhm.
So I thought that by dating wisely, then that meant that I would get a reward from heaven. It's like this good girl narrative.
Mm,
And the older I got, I realized like I actually haven't even met somebody I want to have kids with. So it's not even like hurry up because no, it's that I want to know the person that I create a life with. And it hasn't happened yet. So, and then I got my diagnosis of endometriosis, and my gyno literally said, there's no way you will be able to carry a child with the amount of disease that is in your body. So that was another Job moment of, you mean to tell me
I
I
done saved my good
my,
egg.
my good eggs in that bad marriage and now I can't have kids? Are you kidding me?
Mm,
And
mm,
it was just, I'm realizing it's another opportunity to love myself because when I really weighed my options and everybody was giving their opinion. And if there's anybody dealing with infertility, or if you love somebody dealing with infertility, please do not give your opinion. Please don't. Just let them process because there's literally nothing you can say that's going to make them feel better. What's going to make them feel better is you sitting with them, holding space for them. And when they're ready to talk about adoption or IVF,
mm.
then launch into that conversation. But so many people wanted to make me feel better because I was in so much pain. But it was like, I have to grieve not being pregnant. I have to grieve that. And I have to grieve the man that I thought I was going to have kids with. You know what I mean? So through this process, it's like, yeah, I actually tapped into what I wanted. I was like, so wait a minute. Do I even want to spend all of this money to take out a loan? I'm grateful there are loans for infertility, but do I want to
Didn't
put,
know that, but okay.
oh yeah, there's loans. There's so many places you can get grants.
Wow.
Because I have a lot of gay couples that I'm friends with that
That's
know
awesome.
everything about like surrogacy and whatnot. So one of my dear friends gave me some advice, but I just realized I cannot put myself, I choose not to put my body through something that isn't a guarantee. Because if I got three little eggs left kicking that survived under intense trauma from the endometriosis, I don't like, there's no guarantee that your eggs will be fertilized properly or that it will implant properly. And
Mhm.
I just thought about the process and I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to go through that. I think that for
Yeah.
now, I'm going to focus on healing because I had to get a complete hysterectomy, which means everything's gone, which is why I'm sweating. If you could see me right now, I'm from here down, I'm a sweaty mess. And I have these fans. Uh, but I had to deal with that. I had to deal with a bowel resection. And I was like, I don't want to think about IVF right now because I have so many friends that went through it
Mhm.
and it's another roller coaster. And I was also like, I'm not even in a serious relationship right now.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
beauty of not being in a serious relationship right now is not that I can't get somebody. That's what I've learned over the years. It's never been that I couldn't get somebody. It's that I stopped checking in with myself and asking, do I even like this person? The desperation
You
to be,
wanted to be chosen and you
I
didn't
wanted to,
realize I
girl,
have the power.
I
I
was a pick me.
choose.
Yeah. I was a pick me, and I've been really going through like journaling and seeing, just remembering my dopeness and realizing it's not a bad thing to toot my own horn, because there's so much manipulation that goes on in churches. Not all churches, but I think it would be, I wouldn't be sharing my truth if I didn't say, yeah, I definitely experienced spiritual manipulation in that church, where I was taught to only esteem others better than myself. And I'm not going to say I hated myself, but I definitely thought I had nothing to offer anybody, because, the language that's being used, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve any of that. I'm now saying, actually, I like myself. These are the things that I'm good at. And actually, I look good. Hey, girl, how you doing? Like, thank you, God, for putting this together the way you put it together. Let me take care of myself. Let me shine. Let the joy come out of me. Let me not be in this whole thing of, oh, I don't want to be seen. Some people are created to be seen. So, it's just been a journey back to myself and realizing that, no, I didn't deserve any of that. But that man also knew that he would always come in second. And it's not on purpose. It was just an energy, a vibe thing. You know what I mean? And it's like, as I hate the label of alpha, but as a strong woman, put it that way. If you don't date or marry somebody who is used to seeing a strong woman be in partnership with a strong man and seeing that it can work, they're going to see you as the enemy for just being who you are.
Yeah.
So that's made dating more fun for me, because it's like, yeah, let's go out on a first date. And I'm listening. Now I'm listening differently. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I went out with this dude, very handsome, very sweet. Very handsome. But he told me he listened to Joe Rogan, and I was like, ooh, no, no, sir. No, sir. This isn't going to work. And he doesn't vote. So it's like all of these things that we were told to not think about when we were dating in the church. Now I'm like, no, these are actual very important things that I need to pay attention to, because I've built this beautiful life on my own. I didn't want to, but I managed to be an alchemist and turn what I thought was garbage into this beautiful life. So now I'm choosing partnership. If you can't add to my life, then we don't need to do this. We just don't. If you're not going to at least meet me where I am and be able to go into the rooms I go into, which my ex could not, it's like there's nothing worse than like taking your dude somewhere and realizing like, oh man, I have to babysit him because he might say something crazy or act crazy.
Yeah, been there.
Yeah. So it's like I really do like myself now. And I like seeing what can.
Did you hear what you said?
I did. I like my girl. Listen, I wake up in the morning every day and I'm like, you look beautiful.
But that also insinuates that you didn't like yourself before.
I didn't know I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know I didn't. I thought I was being holy and humble by not spending time taking care of myself, not doing the things I like doing, because I was telling myself a narrative that worked for other people. That narrative was to keep me subservient and to put all the shine and spotlight on my husband. Now, here's the thing. When I meet the man that deserves that kind of shine and spotlight, you better believe I'm a shining on him.
Yeah.
but it just wasn't the right person. It wasn't the right circumstances. And I lost myself in the idea of what a Christian marriage looked like.
Mhm.
I lost myself in him. When I
Mhm.
tell my friends in LA, it's hilarious because when I'm writing my solo show and I talk about my marriage. So I had some of my team over and I showed them old pictures of my church self, and they're like, even your energy is so low in these pictures. Like you really don't let yourself shine and you're really trying. They're like, I can see the work in these pictures. And it's like, dang, you can see the work. And thank you for not even recognizing me. That shows that I've done the work.
Mhm.
So now it's like I wake up, I look in the mirror, and a friend of mine actually had me start doing this. He said, you need to look in the mirror every day before you even like wipe the sleep out of your eyes and tell yourself 5 things you like about yourself. And I thought it was the stupidest exercise. Don't you know it was the hardest thing to
Mhm.
list 5 things I liked about myself?
Mhm.
I never knew that that's what I was holding, but I had been telling myself this narrative of being undeserving. How many times do we say we're undeserving? In worship songs, in prayers? I'm undeserving. This, and that. I'm not worthy. I, for me, myself personally, my route to healing was realizing that because God made me, I'm deserving. Because God is in me, I'm deserving. And I'm actually telling him that his creation is worthless if I don't shine the way I was created to shine. Like, who am I to dim a light that he put in me? Like, I tried really hard. So that exercise of the affirmations started reminding me of all of the stuff that I've had since a young child. And now my family is like, she's back.
Mhm.
That's who we remember.
And full circle.
Full circle. We are happy. Listen, I always say I am single until I meet somebody who makes me not want to be single. And I'm okay with that because look at it's not weaponizing that scripture. You know how they weaponize that scripture about how single people can just focus on the Lord. So that's why single people have to be in the church all the time.
Mhm.
I choose to see it the way like Dolly Parton was talking about not having kids.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, because this was something that was clearly not part of my life journey, I'm still grieving it. I do still have my moments where somebody will post, we're pregnant after all these years. And I'm like, but
Mhm. And
I,
that and true. Yep.
and it's probably going to be a wound that's there all the time.
Right. Right.
But because I made that decision on my own,
Mhm.
I can now say, okay, God, universe, what are the things that I'm able to do now because I don't have any children of my own? How can I turn this into something that makes this loss make sense? Because this is something I've wanted my entire life. So
Mhm.
there has to be a reason why my body said, you can't do this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where I am, and I feel good.
Well, I think that's a great place to end this.
Agreed.
Um, yeah, I didn't even, I mean, I guess we're recording, but this was just kind of like our normal phone conversation. Thank you so much for your vulnerability, your openness, but also being brave in the messy of it all.
Thank you.
And not being afraid to share that with this platform. And I think that is where healing begins for many people and seeing a person who is so dope. And by the way, this is a award-winning actress we're talking to, and I didn't intentionally talk about her career. Zakiya Young, look her up. You'll see her, that she is. I think let's talk about Little Mermaid. You want to talk about Little Mermaid? Let's throw Pretty Little Liars and like. So
Hmm.
kind of a big deal. She's my friend. But just thank you so much for just being brave and open and honest.
Absolutely. And thank you for knowing when to push me. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Mhm.
Because I can already guarantee I'm going to have moments tonight where I'm like, dang, I shouldn't have said that. That was too much.
Mm.
But thank you for reminding me that I want, even in my bio, I wanted to be authentic. And my story is my story. My ex-husband will have his own recollection
Mhm.
of what went wrong in our marriage. And
Mhm.
he is open to that. He's entitled to that. But
Yeah.
I'm also
That's
entitled to tell
okay.
my story.
That's okay. And that's the intent of this platform, is to have it be a place where women who've lived through trauma can come and share without judgment, um,
Mhm.
and really build a community of people so they don't feel like they're alone.
Thank you for listening. We want to express our heartfelt gratitude to our incredible community. Your strength and resilience shine brightly, and together we're creating a safe space filled with solace, guidance, and inspiration. If you resonated with today's episode, share with anyone who might find comfort and support this conversation. Let's spread warmth and encouragement and hope. Join the Lived community on social channels. It's Lived Stories on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, where you can connect with like-minded women, share your story, and access even more trusted resources. Until next time, take care and remember, you are not alone in this journey. You are stronger than you think, and you can do hard things.